This podcast is brought to you by HealthRangerStore.com. Lab-tested clean foods and supplements for immune function, long-term storage, and survival applications. Every purchase helps fund this free speech video platform. Thank you for your support. There's going to be a day, probably soon, where we all wake up and our banks are frozen. Bank accounts are frozen. You can't log in to see your account balances, no savings accounts, no checking accounts, no investment accounts. All the hedge funds will be frozen, and the dollar will be frozen because the collapse will be on. The so-called Great Monetary Reset will be underway. This is Mike Adams here, the Health Ranger. Thank you for joining me today from Brighteon.com, the blacklisted and censored alternative to YouTube. If you want truth and freedom, go to Brighteon.com. And it is currently June 27th, 2020. So the Great Economic Reset is almost here. And I was reading an article recently from Egon von Greyers, who runs, I think, goldswitzerland.com. I think that's his URL. And he was absolutely correct in warning that there will be no recovery. There will only be more money printing, and that all empires end in a deluge of debt and currency collapse. Printing money and collapsing from too much debt. And that's where we are right now. With the United States printing, I think it was $7.5 trillion or something in that range during the coronavirus lockdowns, just printing trillions of dollars and sending it out to banks and businesses and even in some cases individuals with the CARES Act, the unemployment benefits and so on. This money printing is nothing but fake money that's chasing real debt. And when you keep printing fake money because you're going deeper and deeper into the economic hole and you think you can just print your way out of it, but the cost to print your way out becomes increasingly dear over time. The end result can only be catastrophe. Now, this catastrophe will, of course, crater the stock market, but it will also crater pensions, entitlements. We're talking about a total collapse of the dollar currency and much more than just the dollar. This will collapse the euro. This will collapse China. This will collapse economic systems and central banks all around the world, from Germany and France to Spain to Australia and Hong Kong and China, maybe even Japan as well. It's going to be devastating. And the only answer to this, the only long-term strategy, is to get into gold and silver and land. That's it. It ultimately comes down to that. The bond markets are going to be crushed. The real estate markets are going to be crushed. And importantly, cities will lose so much revenue because of, tax revenue losses due to real estate cratering and local businesses going bankrupt. We're already seeing that underway. In New York City, for example, which has lost so much revenue, they're laying off, or at least New York State is laying off, I think, 22,000 employees because of a lack of money. I think it's the state, maybe it's the city. But other cities, Los Angeles, Chicago, all the big ones, they're going to have to start cutting city services in a huge way. Not just the police, but also road repair, firefighters, many first responders and basic infrastructure. Massive cuts are coming. Cities are going to fall into disrepair, and everyone who can will flee the cities because the cities will become essentially third world shitholes in America, thanks to Democrat rule and debt spending. And you can get away with debt spending for a long time until the debts come due. That day is finally coming. And the economic collapse, of course, is here. And there will be no V-shaped recovery. In fact, we're already into the second wave now of the virus exploding in certain states like Texas and Florida and California and Arizona, for example. That's only going to lead to more shutdowns and more businesses going bankrupt. In Texas, the governor's already ordered bars to close or to stop serving alcohol, which is the same thing. So Democrat cities are going to collapse. People will try to escape. Those who cannot escape because they don't have any money will be left behind. The city will fall into slums, tent cities, shanty towns with violence and uprisings, and even the police will leave the cities. Most police who can, they will leave. because there's no point in policing in a city where you can be, videotaped and accused of being a racist just for arresting somebody who happens to be black, who's committing arson, let's say, or committing a rape or a robbery. If they happen to be black and you arrest them, then you can be killed. You can be charged, as is happening right now. So police officers will leave the cities as well. What this means is that we're going to see a mass exodus of money out of the cities and into rural America. And this has already begun. Go try to buy farmland in Montana right now. Guess what? There's 10,000 other people looking for farmland in Montana. More than usual, because they're escaping California, they're escaping Seattle, they're escaping Portland, they're getting out of the big cities. The same thing is true in rural Idaho, rural Utah, and also similar things happening on the East Coast as Americans who have money are getting out of the cities and moving westward into, more rural cities and towns in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. This is already happening. A lot of people are moving to Texas as well. Makes me feel really happy that I've got a ranch from 10 years ago that I guess now is incredibly valuable, but not that I'm giving it up or anything. But think about that. I do know that, without naming any specific numbers, the price that I paid for farmland in Texas, in rural Texas, the value has tripled in 10 years. And it will probably go to quadruple or more over the next year because the demand is so high. So you're going to see a reshaping, a reconfiguration of the United States of America. The new wealth will not be having a multi-million-dollar apartment in a city because you're just overlooking a collapsed shithole. Who cares? The new wealth is going to be having land and having firearms for self-defense because the police are being defunded, and having gold and silver, and having a food supply, and having your own water supply, maybe solar panels too, just basically being off-grid. That's the new wealth in America. And that's what people are moving toward here. Literally moving in that direction. They are picking up and leaving the cities and moving to rural America. Now, I know a lot of rural Americans are concerned that, we don't want, Californians to bring their California mindset to Texas, and that's true. But I think the majority of people leaving California now are people who have more of a pro-America mindset. They're getting out because they see what's happening. The brainwashed leftists who are still in California, they probably will never leave because they're afraid of living in rural America. They're afraid of guns. They're afraid of cows. They're afraid. They won't even eat meat. They're soy latte people who live in cities like Soyattle. Play on words there with Seattle. But the real hardcore liberals will never leave California. They will collapse with it. But they will blame, Trump, or they will blame a conservative for it no matter what happens. But the real prosperity in America will be in rural areas outside the cities. The cities are going to become unmanageable. This is further underscored by the fact that bandwidth is now accessible even in rural areas. And given the fact that so many people were told to work from home during the COVID-19 lockdowns of March and April and May, that many companies have discovered that people can work from home just fine. So a lot of people are working from home. I mean, tens of millions now. And if you're working from home, why do you have to live in the city? You don't commute to the office anyway. So why not just buy a place in a state that has no income tax? Keep more of the money you earn, pay 1/4 the rent, or even own a home, own a farm for less than the rent you might pay in New York City or San Francisco. You can have a much better lifestyle, more space. And guess what? If there's another lockdown, you're not a prisoner in a small apartment in a city. You have a place out in the country. The lockdowns are usually a lot less severe, and you might have a large yard or a farm. You can walk around. You can get outside. You can plant a garden. You can grow some of your own food. These are all very important considerations. And this is all about self-reliance and sustainability. So the things that most people value, which is freedom and being able to grow some of your own food and being free from violence, rural America offers all of those things. And you look at Seattle and the terrorists, Antifa and Black Lives Matter seizing 6 city blocks of downtown Seattle, and how the mayor just backed off and let them have it, surrendered that real estate to terrorists. And the police didn't do anything. The National Guard didn't do anything. It's incredible. Governor Inslee didn't do a damn thing, which means that if you own real estate in a city, it can be taken over by terrorists at any moment, and no one will come to protect you. No police will come. You call 911 and they'll just say, sorry, you are SOL, which means Seattle out of luck. You are out of luck. Police aren't responding to your city blocks. Why? Oh, because the terrorists have taken it over. So it begs the question, what's the point of living in a city? When you pay higher taxes, you get less police protection. Your apartment is a prison. You can be taken over at any time. You got no access to the outdoors, and you're entirely dependent on a food supply that's extremely vulnerable to disruptions because there's no food grown in the city. It's all grown in the rural areas. If you live in the rural areas, you live closer to the food, which means, by the way, ecologically speaking, there are fewer food miles on the food. So your food is more green in the sense of, less diesel fuel used for transport. So for those people who are concerned about their CO2 footprint, which tends to be city people who are burning the most fossil fuels to import their food, by the way, if you live in a city, you're not green. You're a walking contradiction if you think you're green. Green living is living out in the country. You're closer to the food supply. You're closer to the farmers. Maybe you farm some yourself. You don't have to import everything into a large city. So rural living is the answer. And getting back to what I mentioned at first with the crash that's coming, you're gonna wish that you had land in the country, that you have some soil that you can garden in. You're gonna wish that you had more gold and more silver, because the dollar reset is coming. And when it happens, cities will collapse into death traps. Cities will become largely uninhabitable in America because of the economic collapse, because of the violence, the looting, the food shortages. If you think Black Lives Matter taking over 6 city blocks in Seattle was bad, wait until the food stamp system stops functioning, the dollar collapses, and every poor person in America decides that they are now going to go loot every retailer and loot all the houses in the suburbs because otherwise they don't have any food. That's going to be a day that you wish not only that you had a farm, it's going to be a day you wish you had an AR-15 because you need to bug out, you have to have a way out. And the best way to get out is to get out before things hit the fan. And I know a lot of you have over the years, and now you're thanking yourself, aren't you, for getting out of the city. I've been talking about this for a decade. And many people agree with me, and they've been taking these actions, and they've been getting out of the cities. And now they're in a safer place. Now they have more options. Now they could grow some of their own food or collect rainwater. They're not going to die from a lack of basic supplies when the dollar collapses. People who live in cities are going to die in large numbers. Some from starvation, some from disease, some from violence, some from fires. But there's going to be a lot of dead in the cities. And the globalists love that, by the way. That's part of their plan. So anyway, look, get out of the cities while you can. This is kind of the last chance. Get more gold, more silver, and more land. Those are the 3 things that are going to have value after the great global economic reset. And everything that I recommend to you is something that I'm doing myself. So this is not just me saying you do it, but I'm not doing it. No, this is the way I live. You've heard me talk about all these things, how I grow my own food and hatch chickens and have space out in the country, and I filter rainwater and do all these things because these are the necessary skills to survive. Including having more than one AR-15. Typically, you need a short one, you need a long one, you need you need one for night shooting, set up with a night sight, and then you need one for daytime shooting, and then you need one for your truck, you need one for your car, you need one for your tractor. How many is that? It's like 7 or whatever. So yeah, you need more than one AR-15, lots more. So get started. What are you waiting for? Get them, get some. It's never going to be easier than getting them now in terms of laws. So you might as well get some. Thanks for listening. Mike Adams here. Hear more of my podcasts at brighteon.com. My channel is HR Report. Thank you for watching. If you want to support our mission, visit us at healthrangerstore.com for the world's largest selection of lab-verified superfood and nutritional products for healthy living. It's at healthrangerstore.com.